And my name is Grace Freybuck.
Today we're going to be talking about the 6-Day War.
The 6-Day War was a war between the Israelis and the surrounding Arab nations. How did the 6-Day War begin?
The 6-Day War started because General Moshe Dayan, the Israel defense minister, believed that it was only a matter of time before the three Arab states coordinated a massive attack on Israel.
Day 1. On June 5th, 1967, the first day of the 6-Day War, Israel begins bombing Egypt at 11 in the morning. The bombs were so loud that we fell to the ground, said Samir Bolos, a survivor of the 6-Day War.
Israel later begins airstrikes in Jordan and targets Syria Air Force bases.
Syria, Jordan, and Iraq begin airstrikes against Haifa, Jerusalem.
Jordan then launches airstrikes on Netanya, Jerusalem, and Israeli targets.
Jordan and Iraq attempt strikes against Tel Aviv, Jerusalem. Jordan also begins artillery fire against the city.
At the end of the day, Israel destroyed most of the Egyptian Air Force.
Day 2. On Day 2, Syrian forces fortify the border with Israel and begin artillery fire.
Israeli forces captured Egyptian tanks. Israel tanks swept through the Sinai Desert and would defeat Egypt's armed divisions despite Israel's tanks being outnumbered 3-1.
Ramallah, northeast Jerusalem, Ammunition Hill, and Talapoit are all among areas Israeli forces captured. Since Egypt was losing badly, Gamal Abdel Nasser, the second president of Egypt, ordered them to retreat.
Most of the Sinai was now in Israel's hands.
Day 3. For the last 19 years, Jerusalem has been divided, but not anymore.
In the morning on the third day of the 6-Day War, the Israelis' paratroops went to the fight against the Jordanians to win the eastern part of the old city back.
The battle lasted early morning to afternoon until the announcement was made, the Temple Mountain is in our hands.
For the first time in 2,000 years, Judaism's holiest city is now in Jewish hands. UN Security Council presents a ceasefire initiative.
Gamal Abdel Nasser turns the initiative down.
Israeli Prime Minister Levi Eshkol suggested to Jordan's King Hassan that a ceasefire and peace talks begin. But Hassan doesn't respond.
Israel claimed Bairel Hasma and Al-Kazmaya in Egypt.
During the war, Jordanian forces are ordered to retreat.
Fighting between Syria and Israel continues on the border of Golan. Day 4.
June 8th began with one of the most tragic accidents of the war.
Israeli planes mistakenly attacked the USS Liberty, an American electronic surveillance ship sailing just offshore.
The attack was called off as soon as the mistake was realized, but not before 34 American sailors were killed.
Israel now held both the coastal plain to the west of the hills and the Jordan Valley to the east, a desert and natural barrier between Israel and the countries of Jordan and Iraq and Saudi Arabia.
Throughout the day, Israeli forces consolidated their control of the West Bank.
Meanwhile, in the south, Israeli forces pushed towards the Suez Canal, leading Egypt to accept a ceasefire late that night.
In the north, Syrian artillery bombarded continued all along the border. Israel now moved to focus its forces on Syria.
Day 5. On June 9th, Egyptian President Nasser revealed the truth about Egypt's defeat.
In an effort to shift blame, Nasser falsely claimed that American and British aircraft assisted the Israelis and that the enemy was operating with an air force 3 times stronger than its normal force.
Egypt and Jordan were defeated, and now Israel finally turned north to Syria.
For decades, Syria often attacked northern Israeli cities, villages, and communities from the Syrian-controlled Golan Heights.
Since 1949, more than 1,000 rockets and bombs had rained down on Israel.
Terrorists often infiltrated Israel's border, carrying out attacks against civilians.
More than 120 had lost their lives. The Israeli Defense Forces moved on the slopes of the Golan Heights at 11:30 a.m. reaching the first line of steel and concrete Syrian posts.
By the end of the day, Israeli forces held all the roads and access points to the Golan, but they did not get hold of the high ground.
Israel's north was still under threat.
8-6. On June 10th, the Israeli Defense Forces made its bid for the high ground.
As ceasefire discussions progressed in the UN, Prime Minister Eshkol refused to accept a situation where Syria would still be able to terrorize the north, and ordered the Israeli forces to push forward in order to fully neutralize the threat.
The Syrian forces now began to disintegrate, with officers and soldiers alike abandoning their posts.
By midday, Kutrina, the last Syrian stronghold, fell.
The entire Golan Heights was now in Israel's hands.
Israel claimed the Gaza Strip, West Bank, Golan Heights, and Sinai Peninsula to the Suez Canal.
The Six-Day War was over.
What was the accomplishments of the Six-Day War?
One of the accomplishments of the Six-Day War was that the Israelis got their holy city back. Most importantly, by winning the war, Israel avoided off what was intended to be another massacre of the Jewish people. What was not accomplished from the Six-Day War?
An end to terrorism and an end to refugee crisis. It actually made more refugees. An end to hateful cartoons and rhetoric throughout much of the Islamic world, particularly Iran.
Next time you join us, we're reporting on the 6 days of peace.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye!
Bye.